coding session. So already what we've covered on the program so far is learning about how companies operate. We've learned about Agile, we've learned about Scrum and the importance of creating a product, using constant feedback, working in a team, creating a minimal viable product and so on. So what we're going to now do is sort of put some of those principles into action really by actually creating a web app, a mock web app, which is going to be judged, I believe, by our colleagues Alice and Jenny here at Ten10. We're going to learn about how important it is to try and use the right programming language when you're a company to create a product. We're going to learn about the product development cycle and how important it is to be organised with that and release that as quickly as possible. And crucially for you guys, we're going to learn about when you do these kinds of events with coding and start to build up your skills. I appreciate this might be the first time for many of you. How you can evidence it, how you can create a portfolio of all of your work that you've done, so that when it comes to going for job interviews in the future, you can say that you've done some coding, you can evidence that you've done some coding, and I think the guys are going to talk about how you can showcase that as well. So really a hands-on session today where we'll actually get to do, for the first time on the course, some real coding and put some of these principles into practice really. So thanks for bringing all your gear. Absolutely delighted to introduce the team. Do you want to kind of go around and say who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. We'll do a brief introduction. So my name is Ashton. I have been with Ten10 almost 3 years now.
Hi, I'm Robin. I've been with Ten10 for a year and a half.
And I'm Adam, and I've also been with Ten10 for 3 years, roughly.
Perfect. So Ashton, Robin and Adam. Excellent. I'll leave it to you now. You can take over.
Cheers. Okay, thanks very much for that introduction, Richard, and thanks for all of you for coming out tonight. I know on Monday, coding after kind of regular school hours is an intense activity as is, but don't worry, we're here to take you through the whole process and here if you want to ask any questions or anything like that. So got our full support for the evening. I know it's quite a heavy technical one, but again, appreciate for your full attention. For right now, you probably won't need your laptops for like the first 10-20 minutes. So if everyone wants to close their laptops right now, there's the temptation. And I know Richard covered a lot of the outline already, but just to go over again briefly, so we're going to kind of take a little step back, look at what a digital career looks like in 2019. I know that you've done a bit of Agile review for the last session, so this might just be a review for you again, which is great. We're going to kind of dive into that broad area of programming and where to start, so Robin's going to cover that off. We're going to go through a bit of a hands-on activity with Google Chrome, which I know most of you guys have, and if for whatever reason you couldn't download on your device or whatnot, you just pair up with somebody else, so it'll be totally fine. And then we'll get into the project that we're going to be working on for this evening, which is just simply building a web app with a bit of that Scrum and Agile methodology that we learned about last week. And then we'll do a bit of show and tell, wrap up, and have Q&A at the end. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, start with some introductions. Okay. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, my name is Ashton. You can probably tell from my accent, I'm not local to Yorkshire here. I'm actually from Canada originally, and my background originally, I didn't study computer science or anything out of school. I've had jobs, everything from being a librarian to a nightclub bouncer to a Zamboni driver, which is just driving that big truck around on a skating rink. So I had actually graduated, didn't know really what I wanted to do with my career. Moved to Toronto in Canada for a little bit, took a few kind of tech accelerator programs, some intro to coding nights, just like kind of what you're doing right now. And then found myself moving over to the UK and found Ten10, thankfully, that were willing to train me up in technology. And something I found I had a passion in. And like I said, I've been here for 3 years and I'm currently a consultant, just finishing a project with Adam and Robin here at Morrison's.
Yeah, so hi everyone again, I'm Robin. So I actually studied sports science at uni, so I know exactly where a lot of you are. 2 years ago, I'd never seen a line of code in my life, so it's all as new to me, maybe not quite as new to me as it is to you, but I know exactly where you're coming from. So yeah, I've been at Ten10 for a year and a half. I came into their academy with absolutely no technical knowledge whatsoever, and they trained me up, and since then I've been out with 2 different clients, and just, yeah, learned so much that I didn't even know was possible. Done a little bit of automation testing, so I've actually taken that coding knowledge and put it into practice, running some automated tests, so you don't just have to click buttons all day, get the computer to do it for you. And previously I worked as a personal trainer.
Okay, so I'm Adam. I'm originally from Nottingham, moved up here to Leeds for uni. Again, I didn't do computer science. After I finished uni, I was a manager at Tesco for a bit, and then I joined Ten10, and they trained me up in their academy. And I've been here for 3 years now. Been on about 14 different clients, I think now, which is insane, and learned so much from them all. Again, not much coding experience. Did a little bit at uni, but nothing massive. And forgot it all by the time I got to Ten10 anyway, so it didn't really matter. Yeah, and they trained us up, and it was really helpful. So it's basically me.
Yeah, I'm going to just say that was one thing we noticed, that no matter what kind of different backgrounds we had, we all found that we ended up working together on the same client, the same project, and it wasn't just about learning just to code and for the skills for the job, but there's also a lot of people skills that goes into it as well. So throughout the whole course of the evening, don't forget that it's not just about being able to code a program or put together software. A lot of it is people skills and just being able to work with people from all different types of backgrounds too. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go along.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to take the first section, which is what a digital career looks like in 2017. 2019, I'll try again, wrong year. So I'll give you some context to a digital career. So when looking at a career in technology, it's not just computer science like we were saying before. A person with computer science or a STEM background may have the coding knowledge, but they don't necessarily have the people skills, like Ashton was just saying, around what they need to work in this sort of industry. So for example, when we're working at Ten10, we don't look for a technical degree at all. There's an aspect of softer skills that we like to look for. So being able to talk to clients, being able to interact with people, work collaboratively and all that sort of stuff is really important, because anyone can learn to code, not everyone can learn to be personable, I guess. Yeah, so we put more aspects on learning the technical on the job and applying your personal skills. So, hands up, who likes to solve puzzles? Likes puzzles? Yeah, that's basically what we do on a daily basis. We find a problem, we think about it, think how we can fix it, and just use code to fix that. That's literally all it is. So as long as you've got those, a desire to look for problems and try and solve them, you can use code to try and fix them in a technical career. So, importance of technology in this day and age is higher than ever. So who's getting constant updates on their phone every day? It's a nightmare. I've had 23 this week, ridiculous. As annoying as it may be, things are ever changing in apps, and they do need to be updated, obviously, as I'm sure you understand. It can make a massive difference to how these apps work. So it could be security fixes, performance improvements, anything like that. It's to make it more safe and easy to use. Behind every single one of these updates is a developer thinking about a problem and trying to think of a solution. So every single one of these versions is doing that. So if you take Spotify, for example, these guys are very into Agile, and they like to use iterative deployments. So you can see on here, version 8.4.49, so they've had 49 patches on version 8.4 alone. So they're constantly releasing version numbers. Version numbers. It's how you keep a piece of code working well. It's small incremental changes, like you did with Agile before. And to make it more fun for them, I guess, they like to put a bit more humour into it. So this one here is for YouTube up here. Took a lot of the rubbish, mowed the front lawn, and now you need to take a look now. So they can make it fun as well, which is good. So, some challenges of developing software. Due to the nature of software development, there's always challenges. So developers, a lot of the time, we've noticed it at Morrison's, don't like to follow a standard coding practice. They'll just code however they like. And we, when we're testing it, it becomes very difficult to know what version they've released, what sort of code we're looking at. So they could release something and break something in a completely different area, and we'll not know about it until 2 weeks later, which is not ideal. So if you're developing thousands of lines of code in one go, it's understandable that areas can be missed. I get that, but if we do these small iterative chunks again, it makes it a lot easier to find issues. So normally what happens, so that happens to us at Morrison's, so they'll develop some code, a small chunk, and they'll deploy it to us. We'll look at it, make sure it's correct, and then pass it off, and then we can move on to the next one. So sort of move through it iteratively like that. The reason they pass it on to us separately is because it's very easy for someone to write in their own code, to look at it and go, yeah, that's perfect, nothing I'd change on that. And then there's massive amounts of issues in it, and you've missed bits. Think of it like if you're writing an essay at uni, you might ask one of your friends, colleagues to look over it quickly, just to make sure you've not made any massive errors. It's exactly the same in coding as well. So there's so many industries as well now. Everyone wants to use technology in their industry, so whether it's apps on your phone, like your banking app, social media, games, you've got technology in your home, like your Amazon Echoes, Google Home, smart lights, all that sort of stuff. And then it can even go down to the virtual reality, security cameras, and even the smart motorways that you drive on as well. Everywhere's got this sort of technology, all has code hidden behind it, all makes it work correctly. It's hard to escape the fact that every industry has some connection to technology. So this is just a news article that we've pulled from last year. So it was Snapchat deploying a piece of new code, and everyone hated it. Don't you remember last year when they deployed something to do with this stories or something? I can't remember. They swapped the screens around or something, but it was a nightmare, and everyone hated it. The main point to take from that is it's fine to develop these new things, but if no one wants it, then it's a pointless activity. So just make sure you've got that connection with your customers and you know what you want back from it. Okay, so actually before I do that, could someone tell me what Agile is?
The opposite of waterfall.
The opposite of waterfall, correct answer. May anyone give me more detail than that? Yeah.
Where you work on something, but instead of going from the start to the finished product, you make many different versions to see what's better.
Exactly that. Yeah, correct. Thank you. So I'll do a quick overview again, just to recap for you guys. Many years, companies thought that waterfall was the best way to develop software. It was gathering requirements, designing a solution, creating it, testing it, and deploying it, and maintaining it. So there's a couple of problems with that. It takes a very long time to do that. The other areas are sat waiting while they're waiting for the previous step to continue, to complete, sorry. And if there's issues found down in verification, for example, then it might need to go back all the way to design, and then it starts the whole process again, which can really slow things down. Whereas Agile, like we said, it's where we can do short phases of work. We can do all 5 areas can keep working together at the same time. And then at the end of a set period of time, called a sprint, they have a potentially shippable piece of code, which means that the product owner or the customer is receiving something in a short period of time rather than waiting a long period of time. So for example, this could take a year, this could also take a year, but we'd have something after every 3 months, so the customer's all happy if they've actually got something they can use. So again, maybe another example. So the waterfall at the top there, customer is asking, I want a car. Well, no, sorry, I need to get to work in the morning. That's an easier way than walking. In a waterfall style, the development team will say, I'm going to design a car, and I'm going to give you a car at the end of that. So they start to build it, so they put wheels down, put base down, chassis down, and then put the top on and all the rest of it, and you get a car. Obviously, all that time while it's being built, the customer doesn't have a car, they're still walking to work. So in an agile world, we can start off with the board, put some wheels on it, skateboard, get them to work, put a flag on it, make it look nicer, stick some bigger wheels, a bit more of a frame on it, bike, engine, motorbike, and then chassis, make it into a car. All that time, the customer may not be fully happy, but they've got something that fulfills their requirements while they're waiting for the final product. So, this is something that companies are getting more and more interested in. They may not necessarily fully understand it yet, but they like the look of it and they want to get involved. It's quite a big shift in working styles. We've noticed at Morrison's, when they were there, the team that we're in, they're very keen on implementing Agile, and we're trying our hardest. But the senior stakeholders are like, no, we need to deploy on this date with this amount of content in it. So it makes it very difficult to sort of merge those two together. But they're coming around to the idea, and hopefully they'll see the benefit of it. Just to summarise on that, it's a team effort. You need to make sure that everyone gets involved and everyone's fully aware of what the end goal is, because if you don't, you end up with some awkward positions like this gentleman here. So you don't have any specifications, you end up with the wrong thing. No funding, obviously you can't control that ourselves, but it's not made to full potential, end up with something poor quality. No testing, it'll break as soon as you start using it. Market research, there could be something out there already, but it's 10 times better than what you're about to create, so make sure you understand what's currently out there. It's very important. Without a deadline, people will just do what they want and float around for a bit, waiting for something to do. And if there's no demand in the first place, that's a completely pointless exercise doing it at all. Like I say, it's important that the entire team works together to get what they want and a useful finished product for a customer. So, like I said, just to wrap up my bit, there's a career in technology in anyone. It doesn't matter what course you've done at all. The technical learning comes, it's easy, well I say it's easy. It's possible to learn code, but as long as you, like I say, got those personal skills, then you're well on your way to get a career in technology. I'll hand myself over to Robin now, just going to go through where to start the program.
Thanks, Adam. So I'm just going to take you through a little analogy for programming. So I know for a lot of people coming into a whole load of code, never seeing it before, don't understand what it says, it can be really overwhelming. So we just want to kind of give you that little foot up to kind of grasping what it is. So for me, I kind of look at it as it's no different to learning a language. So in the same way that you learn all the different components of how a language is made up, you've got your grammar, your nouns, your verbs, your tenses, how all of that fits together, it's similar when you're coming to a programming language. So you'll have certain things that make up code, such as variables, methods, objects. Don't worry, we'll introduce you to all of these. And they all fit together. So the basis, the theory underneath the programming stays the same across whatever language you're looking at. But it's the syntax, so how we put it all together, the actual words that you use that changes. So the same way French, Spanish, Italian, they're all built on the same building blocks, but the words themselves vary. So it's the same kind of thing. And if you think about it like that, then it's something that you know, it's relatable, so it makes it slightly less scary. So this is just a little demonstration of how languages can vary, but they're all doing exactly the same thing. So every single one of these lines will just write hello world to your computer screen. So in your console, it will print out. But as you can see, every single language just does it that little bit differently. But once you know, I need a method, so I need to tell the computer that I want to do this specific thing, write the line of code to my computer screen, and then you tell it what to write. That's all they're doing there. So it's the same thing. You can learn the basics in one language, and then you can move them across whatever language you want. So, I mean, as you all know, there are so many programming languages out there, but especially when you're starting, pick one that you want to learn all the basics in that language first, and then you can start learning another one. So once you've got those basics to stand on, then you can start picking up. So like, for example, when I was in the academy at Ten10, we all learned Java, so we learned basics in Java, and then on my first client, they turned around and went, right, so you're going to do Ruby. So I had to teach myself the syntax for Ruby, but because I had that basis in Java, I could just apply the Ruby syntax on top of it, so it makes it a lot easier. So just a few little tips when you're starting out. The first one is make sure you understand what you're looking at. We all know you can Google whatever you want, download something, copy and paste code, but if you don't understand what that code is doing, don't use it, because you're not going to learn anything from it. So make sure you understand it first, and then you can put it into practice. So also, don't try and reinvent the wheel. That code is out there somewhere. If you're trying to find today's date, someone somewhere on the internet will tell you how to find that. So don't try and go down this complicated 10 lines of code to find today's date if you can do it in one. As long as you understand what that piece of code is doing, then it's fine. Google everything. So Google will be your best friend throughout this. If you get stuck at any point, type it into Google. There's so many resources out there that can help you. And they'll just, don't spend a day just like staring at your computer screen, not understanding why something's not working. Throw it in Google, someone will be able to help you. And use comments. So this is really important. You can tell yourself what you're doing at each step of the way through your code. So you can comment it out. That line in your code won't do anything, but it will tell you what you've done. So if you go away, 2 weeks later you come back to that code, you know what you were doing at that point. So like, for example, at Morrison's we started an automation pack and all the manual testing ramped up. 2 months later I came back to that code. And if I hadn't written comments in it, I wouldn't have had a clue what I was doing 2 months ago. So it's really important. And also, if you want to take this to interviews, you can show your interviewer exactly, you know exactly what you're doing at each line of code, and it demonstrates that further understanding. Test it. Of course, we're testers. We love testing. So write a little bit of code, test it, make sure it works. If it doesn't work, fix it, test it again. Once it works, move on to the next bit. Like Adam was saying, little chunks of code, test them as you go. It's going to make a much more robust application once you're finished than just writing 1,000 lines of code and then going, it doesn't work, I don't know why it doesn't work. And finally, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, we've all done it, we'll all do it in the future, but coding it's a great place to do it. There's no consequences if you do make a mistake, if something doesn't work. So just play around, get to know what you're doing, what went wrong, and then you'll understand why and you won't make that mistake again. So, hand over to Ashton.
Great, thanks for that, Robin. So I know we've given you a lot of little tips on coding, so we're going to get a little more granular because I know there's a whole lot of subject matter to cover. So we're going to get a little more specific and talk about front-end development. So who here has ever tried to design their own website or maybe done a code tutorial online? Hands up. So we got one hands up higher, so I can see. Yeah. Okay, so just about a third of the room, which is pretty good. I mean, to start that and just kind of get a little taste of what's out there is a really good step. So I found when I first started to code, again, looking at the screen, I had no idea what was going on. So it was really helpful to kind of create an analogy. So one of my previous jobs, I worked as a chef in a restaurant. So when I would come to prepare a meal or if someone would yell out order for me, I knew that there was a set amount of steps in order to cook that food and then get it out so that it would be taken off to the table. So some people relate front-end development to kind of just running a restaurant. So when you've got a restaurant, your front end is kind of like your dining room. So you go in there, it's really nice, you got servers, it's really nicely laid out, all the tablecloths are nicely steamed and ironed and everything. It looks really inviting and pretty and somewhere you want to go eat food. However, what's happening in the back of the kitchen, if you've ever seen Hell's Kitchen or MasterChef or something like that, people are running around frantically, there's messes everywhere, there's like a pot or a pan, people don't actually know what the function is for, which is actually a really good analogy for front-end development. So you get the nice kind of interface of a website, so you would go and log on to, I don't know, the Great British Bake Off website, or if you're going on to a restaurant website in Leeds or something like that, you would see the front end, but behind the scenes of that, there's all these different kind of code components. So we're going to kind of touch on the three main ones that are involved in building these front-end systems. So kind of continue with this restaurant analogy. So let's say you're going to your favorite restaurant, you go to a table, you sit down, and you look at the menu. There's kind of two main components of a front-end website that are involved in that. So one is called CSS, and the other one's called HTML. So if you want to kind of think of how these all interact together, CSS and HTML is kind of how your page looks like, and then your JavaScript, which is a coding language, that one of the ones that Robin mentioned, is kind of like your server that actually interacts with all that back-end chaotic stuff that's happening in the kitchen, and the CSS HTML is just there to make it look nice. So I'll kind of explain a few of these in a bit more depth. So pretty much every web page on the internet involves these three. So we're going to take a little look at exactly how these are, how they kind of combine together in a minute. But if you want to make a quick analogy to them, so I think of HTML kind of like your builder. So basically what they do is they just structure out components of your website. So if you've got an image, where is that image on your website? If you've got like a header text or like an intro title, where is that placed? Your CSS, on the other side, is kind of like your fashion interior designer. They make everything look like really nice, really pretty. Your text could like flash, your text could be, have this nice fade effect, you can have a really nice background to it. That's CSS. And the one that we'll dig a little deeper into is JavaScript. So I kind of consider this as like all these like cake wizards on Great British Bake Off. I like to bake, but I'm no like wizard when it comes to baking. When I see what they can all make on the show, they're pretty much like your average person making these amazing showstoppers. Is pretty much a wizard that kind of gets all these different components together, different steps. They're making spun sugar, they're using like all this different type of equipment in the kitchen. So they're the kind of little bits and pieces that run to pull everything together. So digging a bit more into JavaScript here, go through a few JavaScript basics. So JavaScript, all things considered in terms of like history of technology, it's not really that old. It's only appeared about 1995. So these are all like little fun little tidbit questions for interviews and stuff. So they might just throw out if you've researched the language that you're actually applying for. One of the biggest things to remember is not to be confused with Java. So I know they start with the same word, but they're very different how they're styled. So just something to keep in mind if you're going through languages. You might get, it's kind of like Spanish and French slightly. So they're kind of similar in the way that they're structured, but they're still two different languages. And once again, yeah, it's used by a majority of the web. So just give you a second if you want to write down a few of those things. So, like with all good languages, there's also a lot of reference guides to doing things better. So, hands up, who here has ever written like a dissertation or essay and like got out a book on like grammar or like tips on writing or anything like that, or like looked up a blog post on tips on writing? Perfect, yeah. So when you look up those extra references, it makes it a bit easier to actually do the writing that you want to do. Like I remember I had to do like reports basically, and I had to do basically all the references at the end. I had no idea how to do that. So I had to go get a book out of the library to say what's the proper way to write the references at the end. And that was just kind of a shortcut instead of trying to figure out on my own. There's these different libraries that go along with JavaScript that make it easier to write code. So it's just kind of like if you were to bake a cake and you want to whisk some eggs to make a meringue or something like that, then you could use a hand mixer, or you can use one of those really nice KitchenAid ones that speed up the job, make it a little easier for you, right? So these libraries are just kind of like the nice KitchenAid stand mixer for developers that make it a little more simple to develop code. Again, they're totally optional, probably not recommended to start with, but just a little heads up that once you start looking at different digital roles, it's just handy to know that these are the most popular ones used by different companies. So, this is just one little fun tidbit, again, relating to, so programmers like cooking because it's very much a process, it's very much you're following a recipe, one step after another, but you don't suddenly find out that your equipment is behind the different cereal version, or there's no support for the vegetable that you're trying to put into your stew or something like that. So actually, in some ways, cooking is actually easier than programming stuff. So who uses JavaScript? Again, can't reiterate this enough. Really handy to know the ins and outs, because pretty much any company that you can consider applying for, if they've basically got a web page, there's JavaScript involved somewhere. And like the project that we were working on, we're developing an app for a manufacturing facility. So it's even just kind of behind the scenes, not even a website that you're accessing, it's just for the employees of the company. And it helps them do their job a lot easier too. So lots of different applications, not just designing really cool websites. And it also pays pretty decently too. So I'm sure the money question comes up for a few people. JavaScript developer, always in high demand, so it's a nice little bonus sometimes. So we're going to do a few little basics and just start jumping right in here. So again, learning to code, all about kind of making mistakes, trying it out, testing it. So if you all just want to open up your laptop now. So if you all want to open up your laptops, open up a browser. I'm just going to grab a chair. 'Cause this is a little session here. Okay, so this is kind of like the first introduction to kind of like coding and like the behind the scenes thing. I mean, if the main thing you want to ultimately take away from this session is more just understanding what's happening behind the scenes, I'm not expecting anyone in this room to, you know, code the next Uber app on their phone after this session, but it's just more about understanding what businesses and developers and like the different teams that deliver this software, what they go through to bring this stuff to you. So a lot of people, if you haven't tried this already, if you go to a browser and you press F12 on your browser, you open what's called the developer controls. So Rob and I will kind of walk around. They'll help you out if you're having issues accessing this.
I don't have an F12 on it.
Yeah, and some people don't have those 12 buttons.
Oh, right, okay.
You guys alright?
No.
So you'll need to pull down your function key and then press it, and it will automatically use all your buttons. There you go.
You're right, yeah. So yeah, if you don't have the F12 key or whatever, you can right click and then here I'll show you this other way to do it. So yeah, for those of you who don't have F12, you can just right click and you can go inspect and it also pops it up as well. Okay, so everyone's opened up that already. So while you have that open up, question? While you have this open up, just kind of take a quick scan. So again, we're not going to read through all this. I'm not expecting everyone to fully understand what's going on, but this is just a really easy way for you to look behind the scenes of the website that you're looking at to see all the different elements that are interacting that built that website and those components. And you may even be able to just identify a few little elements of the page that you'll notice. So Google, obviously, they put a lot, they're known for their software, they put a lot of work into it. I'm just trying to, if I go to, let's say, Great British Bake Off website or something. So who doesn't love the Great British Bake Off? So let's say I inspected this, got me to the developer page. So I can see that this little button, what it's doing is it's referencing a link, so that if I actually clicked on that button, I'd expect to go to the news and recipes page, basically. So you can see the behind the scenes part is that developers actually coded it that says, this is the URL that I want that person to take me to, or I want to take that person to, if I click on this link, and then there'll be extra little details like the title of that. So it's like news and recipes, right? So this would be the title of the page, and I could like type in there, play around with it, and change that myself. So again, the little fun thing that people like to do is just pull like an April Fool's prank on friends or something like that. They'll like open up their homepage, go in there, edit some of the words and images, maybe make a custom website for their friends. So even if you just start off with this, it's a great way just to jump right in and get editing some of the coding elements on the page. Don't worry, you're not going to mess anything up. You're not impacting anyone else's Great British Bake Off experience by changing things on your site. But yeah, so just a fun little thing you can do. You can jump in behind, see what's going on behind the scenes of your favorite web pages. So I'll let you all play with that a little bit another time here. So in this area, what I want everyone to go over to is this section called console. So everyone should have that in their developer tools. They've got this little section called console.
Has everyone managed to get onto it, by the way?
Yeah, we've got a couple of error messages already there.
Oh, excellent. That's good.
Okay, let's give them that a refresh.
Maybe, no, I think it's fine. Are you logged in on Google, yeah?
Yeah.
I'll see if I can zoom in if anyone's having issues seeing
Google.
Is that a bit better? Can everyone see that?
I don't know what Google's
Easier
doing,
one?
but
step up the game then.
I'm intrigued. I want to see what
Okay. So, like Adam and Robin both said, one of the best things about coding is that you could just access it pretty much for free whenever you want to and just start practicing it. Because if you're trying to do, like, if you're trying to maybe study to build bridges or something like that, it's pretty hard to like order a bunch of steel, find a river, and try and start building a bridge and see if that turns out okay. Whereas if you're trying to be a developer, there's a limited amount of tools, resources, communities, and even just options where you can just go onto any old browser and start practicing code. So we're just going to do a couple little examples just to kind of give you a taste of JavaScript here. So again, one of the benefits is that we can just start typing in here. However, we have to remember that computers don't understand regular English like humans do. So if I want to maybe say, okay, computer, I want you to take the numbers 5 and 4 and add them. It's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So we need to write code, or basically give the computer commands in such a way that it understands. Who here has seen the movie Ratatouille, by the way? Hands up?
Hell yeah.
Great. So, for those of you who haven't, you're missing out big time, but there's a scene in the movie where this little rat, who's got kind of a nose for cooking, finds this other human boy who's kind of working in a kitchen, and he climbs up on his head and tugs on the little hairs on his head to make him move and basically cook. So by tugging like one little hair, he basically makes this person move around the kitchen, pick up certain ingredients, chop them up, make soup, all this kind of thing. So we're going to have to do this somewhat of a similar thing with computers and tell them exactly what we need them to do and be as specific as possible. So what we're going to do is, first off, just do something pretty basic, is just add two numbers together. So we can't add two numbers just typing in the computer and using English to tell what to do. We will just basically use computer syntax. So let's just start with something really simple. If everyone wants just to type 5 plus 4 and hit enter. And so obviously the Google browser is quite advanced as technology's moved on, so it basically completes that for you. Sound good? Cool. Okay, so let's say, for example, we're on the British Bake Off website and we're making a cake and we're adding like different cups of flour or something like that. We're going to add like 100 grams of flour to 250 grams of flour or something like that. So we could go 100 grams, 250, we get 350. So you just type that again just to kind of give yourself another example. Or what we could do is create something called a variable, because maybe depending on who you are, you're going to be using different measurements for different recipes. So what we're going to do is create something called a variable here. So if everyone just types var for variable, call it var flour. Leave it right there. So for those of you that have kind of played around, done a little practice with code already, does anyone want to kind of share with the class what a variable is? Or how you kind of understood or explained it? Yeah?
When I watched a tutorial about, say, an author writes a book and he's got someone's name, instead of having to read the whole book and change them all names, create a variable, so wherever that name pops up, you can change it straight away. Just you don't have to read the whole thing again.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a really good point about variables is that you can change them and swap them around easy, right? So if I'm just using these numbers, they're kind of fixed, they're absolute, they're not very flexible as you have a program. As you can imagine, if you're using any apps on your phone, there's a lot of different inputs. So even just for example, I'm creating a login for, I'm using like a taxi app or something like that. I need to put my name and email address in. Then it's going to be accepting so many different names and email addresses, it needs to be dynamic and flexible so I can store that information somewhere. So a variable essentially is just a box where you're going to store information. And what's inside that box can change. So I can create this variable flour, it's just an empty box, and I can say that's equal to 100 grams of flour. And I hit flour, left off the little end bit. So I can assign it a value, and then it basically holds that value. And then if I call that, again, that box, and say, hey, what's inside that box? The computer tells me what's inside it. So next time I can perform basically an operation or something like that. So making a cake, I know how much flour I've already weighed out. And I can add that. And what I can also do is swap out that amount. So I can say flour now. Maybe I'm doubling the recipe. It's equal to 200 grams. Put this little semicolon on the end because it's kind of like a full stop at the end of the sentence. So you'll kind of pick up little things, little bits of code like this as you go along. But in terms of kind of telling the computer a sentence, like you would in English, it just wants this little semicolon on the end to know that you finished typing the instructions in. So I can say flour is 200. So now if I call flour, I've taken the 100 out and I've put a 200 amount of value in. Okay. So again, tons of coding, like little coding exercises you can do, but this was just to show you that right in all your browsers, you have a way to start typing in code, developing code, and you don't need any special software or anything like that to start doing it. Okay. But what we're going to actually do now is go through designing the product, kind of using the skills that you had from your previous session with using Agile and Scrum. So what we're going to need everyone to do, so we'll put a hole in the console right now, is open up a new tab. And if you go to codepen.io, it's really hard to look and type at the same time. I mean, if you just Google CodePen, you're going to get there.
No, that, I know, I think you have.
Okay, this is what it looks like. Ta-da! So, what this is a really simple way to design coding projects and save them in like a little mini portfolio. So, it's one of the nice benefits of it is you can just kind of get started right away. So you can create something that's called a pen, and you start basically designing a project. And it does it anonymously, so you don't need to give any of your details or whatnot. So again, really easy just to start coding. But what we're going to do, because it's a good first step to kind of create yourself a mini coding portfolio for employers and whatnot, if you all just want to take like 2 minutes and create a profile, sign up for CodePen, create a login and email. So this will be a good way for you to save your code later on through each process and each week. So I'll give you guys like 2 minutes to do that.
Well, I'm just going to sign up for it. I mean, I wouldn't use it anyway.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
Something like that, okay.
You don't need to worry about like getting all styled out, getting the right background image, and uploading profile picture and stuff like that right now. Just simple username and password is totally fine. Just give me a hands up if you're still logging in, create an account, so I just know who's left. Does anyone have any questions about what we covered so far or anything? I know there's a lot of information tonight, but it's a really good kind of way to kind of throw yourself in the deep end, start to kind of understand things, and then kind of pick a style and coding language and things like that that you really kind of gravitate towards, or types of projects that you gravitate towards. But the best way to get started is just to get started and start doing some code, basically. Cool. So, looks like most people are in now. So in terms of kind of the basics, the overview of JavaScript, we kind of cover the console. In terms of kind of syntax, that's just basically the way the computer kind of accepts sentences that you kind of type in the computer. We're going to cover comments in a second. Everyone on your table, you'll notice that you've got kind of like a little cheat sheet that we'll be using for today. So some of this is covered on your cheat sheet, so don't worry if you kind of go through it right now. You got a little cheat sheet to refer to for the tutorial that we're using.
Got a couple more. There should be dots.
Yeah, there's a couple more. I mean, you're going to be working in pairs anyway, so as long as you got one sheet between the two of you, it's fine.
You guys need an extra sheet. We've got one between you two.
Yeah, so that's on your sheets. Variables we already talked about. This was kind of creating that variable flower for a Great British Bake Off website. We want to be using well thought out variable names, not just kind of plain generic ones. And we'll also get into doing some bits on objects and functions and methods. So all the basic components are basically the ingredients you need to start developing code. So what we're going to do is start with our little project. So hands up, who's used like an online timer on the internet before? Whether it's for a quick meditation break, a snack break, presentation timing. I see some people who haven't used it. I don't know what you're doing. No. I'm sure, yeah, or either you've used it online or your phone. There's timers. It's basically baked into almost every type of app online. Lots of apps, web apps, everything's got a timer. We've worked on a project where we had a timer that logged people on a web page if they're inactive for too long as well. Learning to code a timer is one very common interview problem. If you try and explain to an interviewer and how you break this down, and it's also a big component of a lot of apps, which is why we're going to go through this project today. So, designing an app timer is actually quite simple, but actually an idea that's worth £13,000. So this is an example of a recent Kickstarter project created by 2 London college students. They basically said, hey, what if my watch didn't tell the time? What if it actually counted down to really major events? So they're like, well, do you know how to code? Well, I don't really know how to code either. Okay, do you want to like try and learn? So they put their heads together over a couple months. They developed a really simple script, and they just found some hardware, threw that on a watch, and they've raised £13,000 on Kickstarter before even graduating university. So again, just showing you, not only is this little timer script really valuable for companies and their apps and design, it could also get you your next little idea, and you can almost even start a company on your own. So let's introduce Cakes on Campus. Jenny and Alice have begun this startup. So everyone say hi to Jenny and Alice over there. So they've gotten really entrepreneurial. They're like, look what Deliveroo is doing, look what Uber Eats is doing. You know, we've got a really good market fit. We know students like cake. Who here doesn't like cake? We got one. We'll find out after you, sir, after in the future here. But right now what we're going to do is focus on the cakes for students, kind of brighten up their day, maybe special occasions, birthdays, and just focus kind of on the student market. So Jenny and Alice know that there's a lot of competitors out there. Obviously, Deliveroo's got quite a bit of the market, so they want to move really fast and develop their software. So they don't want to do it in a waterfall method and maybe develop their software over an entire year before they get that out. They want to start getting delivery drivers on the road right away and start getting that feedback from their customer base to see how they can keep growing their company. So we're going to use a bit of an agile approach and that CodePen tool that you'll have open to develop basically something for Jenny, who is our product owner, and Alice, who is the main user of the app, who's going to be running out, getting feedback, and testing out your app that you develop. Okay? And also, all on your desk, you should have one other little piece of information. There's a business card with Jenny's email, I believe.
We put mine and Alice's out.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So they're going to be the ones, not me, that you're going to be shipping your code to, and they're going to be testing and evaluating it too. So just kind of getting that practice of developing code, we're releasing it to customers, and then we're going to get that feedback on the right way. Okay? And then once again, Adam and Robin are going to be kind of floating around if you have any questions or need any help. Cool? Okay. So we're going to start with Jenny, who's going to tell us our product requirements for the first sprint that we're going to do.
Okay, so I would like, please, a countdown timer. I would like it to be called Countdown to Delivery. countdown to delivery. So basically, I'd like a timer that counts down in seconds from a time that I can specify. Alice is my delivery driver, so depending on how busy we are that day, I want to be able to be given an order, specify a time that Alice has to deliver the cakes in.
And so Adam's writing up on the board just in case you missed any of that, but also good to have on your own notes and kind of frame it in a way that you want to kind of design it. Don't worry, I'm going to walk this through with you. I don't expect anyone just to come up with a solution, so we'll kind of go through kind of step by step on here. I'm just going to have to mirror the screens because it gets a little tricky always looking back like this.
For the sake of clarity, and could you just give an example of what you mean? So, for example, if you want something delivering, so 6 o'clock.
Yeah, so I mean, if I've said to my customers, if I tweet in the morning and say, today, one day only, I've got super fast delivery times on, I've got 5 extra delivery drivers, so I promise you that everything's going to be delivered in 29 minutes or less.
From the time you order?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can then set my timer and it'll count down in seconds. All my delivery drivers are going to be keeping an eye on that, running around.
Thank you.
Think Domino's, but better.
Domino's but better. That's
Does anyone need a card?
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
So, with Agile kind of delivery and software development, it's really important to keep in mind we're not trying to design like the Uber Eats, like smooth business process app all at once. We're designing something that gets the job done, gets that sent out, and gets some feedback. So just like that example that Adam and Robin were talking about earlier in the slides, with kind of developing a car for somebody versus that kind of little scooter that turned into a bicycle, it may turn out that our customers actually don't want a car. They just want like an electric powered bike or something like that, and that gets the job done. We don't need to go through all the cost and money and spending to produce a car, when actually they'd be perfectly happy, you know, helping support the environment using an electric bike or something like that too. So what we're going to do is develop this kind of app for Jenny and Alice, and develop in small little chunks, get feedback on that, and then they'll tell us what they may or may not want to improve next. So everyone's got their CodePen area open. First thing you want to do is just title your project. So their business is called Cakes on Campus, and we're building a timer, so let's name it something really specific like Cakes on Campus Timer. So I'm also going to list the fabulous drawing skills of Adam here to remind you of the kind of differences between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now I kind of gave three little analogies or 3 types of personas that embody each of these. Who could tell me what those 3 are? I had a slide, yeah, one.
HTML is the builder.
The builder, yeah.
CS is the designer. And
Hold on,
JS is the wizard.
The wizard, yeah, totally. So, in terms of kind of like building a cake, so who's seen Bake Off here? Yeah, great. Okay, big Bake Off fans.
Ashton really likes Bake Off.
I really like it. I really love Bake Off. I think it's an amazing show. Okay, I can't believe I missed out on it for some of these. So with Bake Off, what we kind of have is HTML is kind of like the layers of the cake and where we're going to place them. Are we going to make a really wobbly cake? Is it going to kind of tip over? We're going to have nice kind of pyramid layers that kind of go up to the top, but it's just very bare bones. It'd be like having a sponge cake, no decoration on it. So while I'm drawing that, I'll move on to CSS. So CSS is the nice styling of that cake. It's having some really nice icing, that nice marble glaze that everyone's after, a little bit of spun sugar and stuff like that on the top.
Oh, you didn't know.
Those are CSS here, yeah. And then JavaScript's all the little wizardry that goes on behind it. So if you've got one of those cakes where you slice in the middle and there's like little hearts that come out or glitter or something like that, or like sparklers or candles on the cake, that's kind of the JS. It's kind of the interactions of the cake and the actions that it does. So let's start out with these requirements. So we need to have a countdown timer, and it needs to be called countdown to delivery. So let's start with countdown to delivery, because that's quite simple. It's basically a title. So if everyone wants to go into the HTML box, and what we're going to create is what's called a header, okay? So again, I'm going to reiterate, I know there's going to be a lot of information. The point of this session isn't to memorize all the syntax and types of basically the layout of the code. It's more just understanding and thinking through things logically, okay? So first thing to start off with, anytime you enter some new code, we want to use comments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on my little cheat sheet, and right at the top here, in the top corner, you've got comments for HTML. So HTML and CSS actually technically aren't coding languages. JavaScript is, but that's a kind of beside the fact. But just keep in mind the comments, how you write comments for each of these three are different. Okay? So we're going to start by writing an HTML comment. So just this little arrow here, exclamation mark, dash. Okay? So you're going to write yourself little comments, and also for your interviewers, so you can easily explain what the code is that you're doing. So this is where I'm going to put a header. And again, remember the computer is very specific about what you put in. So sometimes if something's not appearing right, or something, there's like a little exclamation mark or error, just double check all of the little syntax, the little brackets, commas and stuff. It just needs to be exactly how I've kind of written up here. I'll probably just enlarge this so it's easier to see again. Okay? So you write yourself a little comment before any type of code that you're going to be executing, and then we're just going to create a header. So with HTML, if you want to put a header, it's just H1 for header 1. And then you're going to put your text in after this little statement here. So it needs to be called countdown to delivery, so I'll write countdown to delivery. Okay.
If you are struggling at any point, feel free to put your hand up.
So all I've done is just written a comment. This is where I'm going to put a header, just to remind myself what I'm doing. And then I've entered a little header, which actually, the nice thing about CodePen is that it appears right on the page, so you can see exactly what you're doing and what the result is as you go. If you want, you can also pair up if that's easier. If one person wants to do a bit of the research or something like that, and the other person wants to do the actual scripting themselves, or if you want to switch halfway through, that's also an option as well. Anyone wants to do that? Or if you're totally gung-ho and you just want to focus on your own laptop, that's fine as well. Totally up to you. Yeah. If anyone wants to pair up, or one person can kind of keep track and maybe write some notes, and the other person programs, that's fine too. Cool, okay, so we've got our header. I think we've already met one of the requirements, which is awesome. The next thing that we're going to do is create our countdown timer. So we need a little place to put our countdown timer first. So what we're going to do is create a div kind of class. So basically what that is just like a little area or section of the page where something's going to go. So a header is fine because it's just plain text. But once JavaScript starts getting involved and it needs to kind of change a little area, and obviously a timer updates every second, we need a little space to put that timer. So we create a little area for our title, and now we're just going to create a little area for our timer. So we're going to call this a div. So class equals timer. And just so you see it show up, we'll probably go something like start. Usually timers begin with start. And then we'll just close that off. So it looks like just text right now, that's fine. It's just kind of a little placeholder of where our timer's going to go. Cool. And then let's add just like a little bit of CSS to this. So we'll probably have our timer kind of front and center, make it really simple. So our CSS is just styling these things. So we've laid down our layers of a cake. We've got like a title, and we've got a little area for our timer. Let's just make them look a little bit nicer. Let's just center them. We'll do that, make it really easy. So in order to do that, you just type the section that you want to stylize or change. So header 1 we'll start with. You're going to start with a curly bracket. And it should automatically type an end curly bracket. So it's just saying anything inside these curly brackets due to everything in the header. I'll just keep it super simple to start. And we'll just say text dash align. So we're just going to line up the text so it's in the center of the page.
Just a little point, everyone, when you learn code, you will notice that all spellings are American.
I was actually doing this the other night, and I was trying to align everything to the center, and I've just learned to do center the proper way, and I was like, why is this not working? Oh, of course, it's American. Right? So yeah. So again, if it doesn't work out, don't freak out or whatever. It just may be a different spelling. Okay. So I've just done that for H1. And I could do something similar for my second one. So since I've named it a timer, it actually kind of makes it really easy to specify in the CSS. So I can just go dot timer. So the difference between the two, the reason why I use a dot for timer and I just was able to use H1, is that H1 is kind of built into HTML already. I created a timer myself, so I just have to kind of put that little dot to let the computer know that this was something I made up. So timer, similar thing, text align. Almost forgot my dash. And center as well. Okay, so now we're going to hop over to the JavaScript bit. Don't forget to save your work.
Has everyone got that before we move on to JavaScript? Is everyone alright with that? Yeah.
Okay, so putting text on a page, styling it up is all nice and fine. It's kind of where the inner workings kind of come into play, where it gets a bit complex. But again, if you got any questions, just shout out. Adam, Robin, definitely can help out here. So we're creating our timer. So if we're creating a timer, what do we need to tell the computer first? So if, for example, Jenny needs to make a delivery, or sorry, Alice needs to make a delivery, she needs to know what until she has to deliver her cake, I guess.
Where to?
Where to? Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah. And how fast do they want it? Right? So building this timer, we need to know how fast they want it. And so we need to tell the computer basically how much time they've got left. Okay? So just like we did in the console, we're going to create like a little variable, a little container, and that's going to hold the amount of time that they have left to complete this delivery. Okay? So just like we did in the console, we're going to start with var, declare as a variable. And we're going to call this one timer. And we're going to set it equal to a number of seconds. We'll just start with 10 seconds now, because it's very easy to check our code, make sure it works with just 10 seconds. Okay, so all we've done, basically, all the computer knows right now is a box has popped up in the computer's cyberspace area. Just this box here, and the computer's like, oh cool, what's inside this? It's labeled timer, and there's 10 in it. That's all it knows how to do so far. Okay, so we need to give it a few more instructions to actually do something with this timer. So what we're going to do is basically, because the JavaScript bit gets a little complex, we may just want to add a couple comments in here. So first comment is, so JavaScript comments, you just do 2 slashes. We're going to do declare a variable timer. This tells the driver how much time they have left. So you don't have to write the comment exactly like I do. You can kind of write in whatever way it's easier for you to understand, but just good practice to get in the adding in comments. Cool. So, start that variable. Next thing we need to do is basically tell the computer that it's going to start with a certain amount of time, and it's going to start counting down, okay? So this is where we use little bits of JavaScript that are already kind of pre-coded for us. So again, instead of like using that hand mixer and typing 8 paragraphs of code, we're going to use a nice KitchenAid stand mixer and kind of simplify a little bit. So with every language and with every coding language, there's little simplified kind of hints and tricks that you can use to make this process a little easier. So basically what we're going to do is declare kind of like a little timer, like you know with your watch does with kind of like a countdown or like quartz movement. We're going to kind of declare what that ticking sound is. So we're going to call this, or we're going to write a comment first and say we need basically some sort of recipe that tells the computer to count down. So we're going to create a recipe that tells the computer So, create another variable. So this one we're going to call TikTok. It's kind of like a ticking clock. It's going to start counting down. And that is equal to this little JavaScript kind of method that's already kind of pre-written. So again, it's just like recipes. So if, for example, you're on Bake Off, Paul Hollywood says, this is a technical challenge, and I need you to make, I don't know, what's a complex bake? Waffles? I don't know, a waffle tower or something like that. I need you to make this nice Belgian waffle tower or something. Here's your kind of recipe. He'll give you like a little predefined recipe. I think sometimes they're pretty bad, but it's still a predefined recipe for if you've never done this before. So this is our kind of predefined kind of method or recipe to create this. So it's called set interval. So pay attention to the lowercase s and the uppercase I. And then we're going to do an open bracket. We're going to type in function. An open and close curly bracket. And a comma. And 1,000. So, very weird. I'm going to explain what this means. So, the recipe is saying, okay, beat the eggs with like a little whisk or something like that. What we're doing is say, okay, we're going to use a KitchenAid stand. This is going to make it a bit faster. So what I'm doing is I have this function here that's going to execute something. So it's going to be like a little robot recipe. So if I was baking this cake, it's basically like having this little robot that pops up beside me. I'm giving the instructions. He's going to go off and like start making the icing or something for me. And then this number here just tells you how often that robot's going to repeat that number. So we're counting down in seconds. Can anyone give me or maybe give a guess on why this is 1,000? Counting down by 1 second, but we're putting 1,000 there. Has anyone done any like training, like running or something like that, where they've got like a little watch app? There's minutes.
1 millisecond.
Milliseconds, there you go. Yeah, so the computer is actually dealing with this in milliseconds. So 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So that's why we're using 1,000. Cool. So this is kind of the template, and now we're going to write in the recipe right in here with the little curly brackets. So every second, this is what we need our little robot to do. So it's going to take, I'll just move this to the bottom for right now. It's going to take this number, timer, and it's going to take off 1 off of it. So basically, you've got a timer, you're counting down every second. It should be dropping it by 1 until it gets down to 0. Make sense? Just, I know it's really simple to write like a timer, like understand it conceptually, but when we tell the computer, we just got to be super specific every step of the way what we want it to do. So, what's going to happen here is we're going to have timer, and what's going to happen is it's going to be equal to, or we're going to basically make it whatever the previous value of timer was, minus 1 second. So remember, whatever is in this recipe that we're writing is going to be repeated every second, and we're going to just take the value of timer, and we're just going to subtract 1 off of it. Okay. And then, what we just need to do is output it somewhere. So the computer knows, okay, we're subtracting it, so actually, you can take a little look behind the scenes. You don't have to do this too. But your CodePen has a console, just like that Google Chrome does. And we can kind of see behind the scenes as you develop something, what these kind of functions are doing. So I'm just going to check behind the scenes, what's my timer doing? And I can see that it's counting down behind the scenes. So the computer's going behind the scenes and basically taking the numbers off, but I haven't told the computer yet where to put those numbers. So that's basically step 2. So step 1 is just saying, okay, take whatever value of timer you had, minus 1, and step 2 is just telling it where to put it. So we've already created where to put it in the previous HTML, so we're just going to do that right now. So what we're going to write is $, open bracket, and we're going to put in .timer in single quotations. So what this is doing is just selecting one of the elements on the page, which is just pointing up to this CSS that said this timer is this location. That's all it's doing. So saying in here, what I want you to do is put some text. So we'll go .text. Text. And we're going to put our timer text in there. So we just added a few little things here. So if you want just to take like a minute, just add yourself some comments here. So whatever's going to help you to remember like each of these steps. So basically, I've created a recipe that tells the computer to count down. So here, I'm having the timer value subtract by 1, so it's basically a countdown. And then I'm going to output that to space on my page. Make sure I spell everything correctly. It's very likely I missed a comma or something somewhere.
So guys, just a little tip as you're going, if you'll notice in the bottom right hand corner of whichever console you're in and you're writing in, there's a little red icon that comes up. So that will tell you if you've got an error in your code or not. So if you just type something in and you haven't finished writing, you'll get a little red thing that will come up. So just keep an eye out for that. So if anyone's got a little red icon in their bottom right hand corner, there's something wrong with your code. So if you're not sure, stick your hand up or try and figure it out.
Yeah.
But
So if you want, you can add comments to this section here, and this section here, just to remind yourself.
That one there needs to be the semicolon.
Ah.
Something we've asked for, but then
But this is more design, isn't it? I think they use it.
But that's what I don't really get, and I don't understand how it works. It just doesn't
That's fine. Oh, wait. Sometimes the computer just refuses to accept your instructions, so we're just investigating that right now, which happens more often than you think.
I think what's missing is on the HTML one, right at the bottom in between timer and div, you're missing the word start.
Well, that's just a placeholder. We could put that in or take it out. Right, so I may not have like my other window or whatnot here. So basically, we've set the timer. We've declared this kind of recipe. It's going to start counting down, and we're going to output it to our class timer. So if everyone wants to just make sure you've kind of got what's right up there under the JavaScript. So you may just need to fiddle, again, it's just like little things like little brackets that will catch you up.
Yeah. That's all left. Convention and make it 20 instead of 10.
Do spaces matter when you write code? When
Space in this case, no. So like, for example, the CSS, I could just press enter and just space it out, just make it a bit easier to read, but it doesn't have impact on the code.
So it should stop again.
It will read basically
And
until
where
it hits a
start, it should
semicolon,
change to
and then
another.
it will stop.
Does the space
No, so white space in code doesn't mean anything. But the way you space it out will matter for readability. So it's important for readability, but it's not important for how the code actually runs.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, if everyone wants to go to their CSS, then what you can do is you can add like little details, like different colors or backgrounds, if you want to edit right now. So you just go into CSS, and then you go like background. You can find like different colors and different backgrounds that you can add to your design. So you know,
Sometimes those
hashtag,
matter.
and you could like come up with like 3-letter combinations.
Rules is time minus 1.
And it'll come up with like little different colors that you can put on there. So everyone wants to, in the meantime, they can add like color or like different font color to your design. I'll find out why, for example, JavaScript doesn't want to work on our new file here.
Is anyone's counting down? Great. I want you to do because nobody's counting down.
If I put those together, maybe it would,
Just change that timer in the text box to, yeah.
Like move that 2 spaces down. So once the more like a second
Okay, so I've got this one working. If everyone wants to double check to see if that completely matches to what you have. Again, I don't know why the JavaScript doesn't want to behave when running through this time, but putting all this together should meet all the requirements for that very first sprint. So just double check yours, that it's all lined up and has everything as laid out here. And again, if you want to see what your timer's doing, you can go console.log and output timer, and that'll be available in your console. So you can see at least that your code is working and counting down from your timer amount.
It's alright, you don't need it, it's just so you can see that the time itself is working.